Good evening and welcome to this hybrid, virtual and in-person Board of Education meeting. If you are attending this meeting virtually, it may be a new experience for some. So please allow me to take a moment to review some procedures that will allow everyone to participate. When speaking, please state your name, address, and topic before beginning your comments. Some meeting participants are joining by telephone and cannot see the face or name of the speaker as shown on a computer screen. The public participation at board meetings, as per bylaw 0167.3, applies to the virtual aspect of this meeting as well. Please mute your phone or computer microphone to prevent feedback and background noise during times when you are not speaking. There is a chat box found in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. The chat box may be used to pose a question. The name or telephone number of the person posting the chat comment will appear on the screen. The board president will read the question aloud during the appropriate section of the meeting for the guests calling in by telephone. This meeting has an opportunity for public comment under item number 9 on the agenda. If you would like to register to make comments virtually during this meeting, please type your name, address, and topic in the chat box at this time. If you are joining this meeting by telephone tonight and would like to register to speak, please state your name, address, and topic now. The meeting will be recorded. The recording includes anything typed into the chat box.
All right, we will come to order. The Manawha Board of Education exists to lead and serve to support the education of all students, focused on developing policies, retaining highly effective staff, acting on behalf of the community, and ensuring the sustainability of the district through open and clear communication. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Holman, if you could call the roll, please.
Mr. Griffin. Here. Mr. Holman. Here. Mrs. Jepson.
Here.
Mrs. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mrs. Petke.
Here.
Mrs. Ryerson.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Holman. Dr. Aphra, can you verify publication of meeting, please?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. Presentation, review of Neola policy and guidelines service. Mr. LaValle, please.
Thank you. You okay if I take this off?
Yes.
It'd be easier to maybe to understand or hear. Dr. Aphra asked if I would come and give a little bit of an overview regarding the policy service we provide for the district. I've put a few slides together. I will provide some information on those, answer questions, really hope to engage in a discussion if there are issues, concerns that we have. And I will try and get out of here because I see it's a pretty full agenda. So just by way of background, I was a school psychologist. I then was a director of pupil services for 14 years. In the last 13 years, I was superintendent of the school district. We were a district that used Neola. We were probably one of their first 20. We had tried to do policy on our own. We would try to make a little bit of headway in the summer and then school would start. And it kind of got pushed to the side. My predecessor found out about the service. And so we were with them probably almost 25 years during my time that I worked. Neola has grown significantly. And when I was set to retire, they asked if I was interested in working with them. I would not have done so if I didn't think there was value in what we have to offer school districts. So you'll see on the slide, I've been working with the Manawha district for 5 years now. Joanne, Bobby, Joe are familiar. Let's see, Stan was on the policy committee. I believe Bruce was, a couple others over the years. So Neola began, as it notes, in Ohio 40 years ago. It was the Northeast Ohio Learning Associates. They were like a CISA, provided lots of different services, and then started to focus on policy. And what happened was Indiana asked if they could assist them with policy, as did West Virginia, as did Michigan, as did Wisconsin, and eventually we ended up in Florida as well. So we're in 6 states and over 1,500 school districts. What I would emphasize, though, is everything and anything you see of us is really based out of Wisconsin, with a couple of exceptions. As I said, we've been in Wisconsin 30 years, 6 offices in Wisconsin, meaning one's in my house and one's at the other 5 retired superintendents who work for Neola. I think one of the pluses or one of the advantages of all of us have probably anywhere between 20 to 30 years as administrators in the state of Wisconsin. So we bring that experience when we work on revising, updating, and developing policy. The policies are specifically for Wisconsin. I think you can flip. Everything you see from us has either been written, vetted, or approved by either Davis and Kilthau, that law firm, primarily out of the Green Bay office, or the Strang, Patterson, Renning, Lewis, and Lacey law firm. And I believe the Renning, Tony Renning is the attorney who works with the Manawa School District. The Lacey, all 5 of those attorneys have been with Davis and Kilthau. They broke off to form their own. The Lacey at the end did a lot of Neola work, and we've continued to do so. There's also a Neola staff attorney who does quite a bit as well. We also have another partnership with BoardDocs. You will see if you access the site, it's connected to BoardDocs. That happened about 4 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago. The platform on which it was previously hosted was no longer going to be sustainable, so Neola invested considerable time, energy, and money to make it work in BoardDocs. I would note, because Dr. Aphra pointed out, we found a mistake in one of the policies, that as part of that transition, we found there were some quirks or some glitches that we tried to fix along the way. And so if there is one of those here, we need to be sure that I get that information so it can be fixed. When we found, Wisconsin was the first state to implement the BoardDocs. And so we found probably we were sort of the trailblazers in implementing BoardDocs in Wisconsin. So we currently have 284 districts. When I started, we had 100. And so we picked up 184 districts in the last 7 to 8 years. Why? Districts have really kind of prioritized what their board and administrative time is doing. There's some time and cost savings. If you were to sort of send to Tony Rennie or another law firm a lot of the revisions or policy updates for their review, you would spend more than, in this, I don't know for you, but other districts have told me, based on their analysis, they would have spent significantly more dollars to have that done. So they found it cost effective to come and work with us. I have a couple other stories. I'll keep moving. There's just a lot of state, federal law changes that we stay on top of for the district. Districts know that, and so have continued to work with us. We're all around you. As I said, those are the other districts. The most recent was Wapaka and Wyawega Fremont. The superintendent who started in Wapaka, Ron Sari, had the Neola service in Potosi, where he came from, brought it to Wapaka, due again to him seeing the value in it. Wyawega Fremont, that superintendent was a principal in Tomorrow River, where we also worked. I worked with both of those districts. He then brought it to Wyawega Fremont as well. And they just finished a complete update review of the policy book. So, as I said, you've been with us since 2015. At that time, what we did was we did a complete review of the policy book. So Neola has a set of standard policies. There's over 400. We looked at those. We looked at board-specific, district-specific policies, things that you said, no, we want to keep. And so in the end, we ended up with some Neola-based policies. We ended up with some hybrids, which were Manawa and Neola combination. And then there were just some specific to Manawa. We didn't have policies. School, it wasn't for you, but one that comes up is school forest. We don't have a policy in school forest, so districts ask us to put that in. Once that was done, what we've been doing last 3 years or so, I don't know, Joanne, Bobby, is at least twice a year, I'm coming and meeting with the Policy and Human Resource Committee. What we're doing is we're monitoring federal legislation, state legislation, any changes to rules or regulations that agencies are putting out. We then bring that information to the district. So last week, for 2 days, Thursday and Friday, we met with both of the law firms in Green Bay. We've been monitoring what's been happening the last 6 months, and we're putting together the update that'll be probably out in June or so, at which time I'll make an appointment to come and meet with the policy committee, and we kind of walk through those policy by policy. There's certain policies we need input from the policy committee. Others, there were changes to federal regulation for the education department's general accountability regulations. There really weren't options there in our recommendation because it's federal law, and we're giving you policy that's legal, will match federal law. We shouldn't mess with those. We also put out special updates. During the pandemic, we probably put out 4 or 5. In addition, the Title IX regulations got rewritten. They went into effect last November. 2,000 pages of regulations that initially an Ohio law firm worked on. It went to a Washington, D.C. law firm who had even more expertise. Then it came back to Wisconsin for the Strang Group and for Davis and Kilthau. We then brought that policy out to the district. The 2,000 pages of regulations ended up almost 29 pages of policy that we whittled down making choices. I just got asked by more than one district, the new administration is reviewing those Title IX regulations. So in fact, it was the Potosi district sent me an email, said, are we gonna get an update? And we had been monitoring that. So because the Title IX regulations were done through the normal rulemaking process, they need to go through a review in the regular rulemaking process again. So it can't be done with an executive order. So I responded to him, we're monitoring it. If there are changes, we will bring those to you. He got back to me and said, thank you for the information. I sort of knew you'd be on top of this. So it's just an example of how we brought to the Title IX policy. Potentially there's revisions. Those law firms are on top of it. And when there's time for looking at whether the district needs to make any revisions, we will bring those to you. What I like to say is what Manawa has, as do our other district, it's a proactive and systematic process to stay current. Most districts, every district I go into is behind in something. Some law got changed, some rule got changed, and I can go to the policy book and a revision was not made. Right? It's difficult to do. It's time consuming to do. I would go to a conference, I'd hear the attorneys, I'd hear DPI, I'd make a mental note, and I'd go, then the Neola guy's gonna bring it for me, all right? So there's a certain sense of comfort in knowing, and I think that's Dr. Opper and the district's point, is knowing that somebody is watching this for us, okay? I mentioned the updates. I've talked about those already, so I won't spend a lot of time. Eventually, those get to a review by the full board. There's an automatic update of the website. So when the board has adopted those, used to be Jean, not Stephanie?
It is
Yep, Stephanie. Informs me, we send them into the office in Ohio. They process them and update your website automatically. If you haven't been there, BoardDocs has basic and advanced keyword searches. Again, they're online, your updates are always there. Part of being part of this group is there's feedback from 250 other Wisconsin school districts. So a board will look at a policy and say, what about this? Or have you considered this? And then finally, we put out a legal assurance. We will provide legal assistance. There's a claim that the district policies do not accurately reflect what's required by state and federal law. All right. And then are there questions?
Sandra, you said that we sent a revision in and it goes through your process and it automatically updates our system? Well,
what it does is we have, in Ohio, there's processors who, when it comes in, they will look at what the updates are. They will archive the previous policies and will update the website, yes.
That is lacking in our system. I found at least 3 situations where we have the old revision and the new revision both listed in the active documents.
Yeah, and Dr. Opper pointed that out, so I went in and fixed that. I only found 2. I'm not sure if there is a third, Sandra, please let me know. Because our goal is to make sure that these are absolutely accurate. I'm gonna go back and look to see if that was a human error, or again, is there something in BoardDocs when they're hitting, replace, that something's happening, but I will be sure to do that.
Okay.
My instinct is this was a human error, which doesn't happen a lot out of that office. But if it isn't, then we need to get to BoardDocs to fix that.
Okay.
Again, when I looked at those, the board had, if there was an issue, the board would go to the most recent revision, but we don't want 2 out there to confuse the public. So-
Well, again, if you are following the policies, both of them are listed as live and active. So it is, basic document, it's wrong. In my previous life, it would have been a corrective action.
Yeah, and again, because the board had adopted a newer, I'm not intending to get in a,
Right.
I really don't, but because the board had adopted a newer vision, that newer version would be the one that's basically active and in place, so. And in fact, I get asked, if the board adopts them on Tuesday night and it takes us a week to update, is the old policy still active? And the answer is no, because the board has adopted a new policy to replace it. There's a little bit of a time lag for one, Stephanie to get that information to me and us to get them all updated, so. Other questions? And again, it's been, I don't know, Bobby, Joe, or Joanna I think it's been a good relationship. But again, there's been good back and forth and dialogue when I come and, okay, here's some options, board. What do you want to, they're your policies. They're not my policies. They're not Neola's, they're your policies. So we need to make them fit what's appropriate here for Manawa. So thank you for the time. I know you have a lot to do, so I will get out of here.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
All right, announcements, contributions to the district. We received 5 boxes of books from Opaka County Association for Home and Community Education, 2 anonymous donations to the Manawa FFA of $250 each. Manawa Area Chamber of Commerce, $151.85 in donation to the Urgent Needs Fund. The Union Threshermen's Club, a $250 donation to the Little Wolf High School class of 2021. And Seal a Smile donation of a toothbrush bag to every student in the district. So we definitely thank them for all of their generosity. Consent agenda. We do need a motion to have the approval of the secondary Spanish teacher removed from the agenda as he declined the position.
Sandra Ryerson, I'll make a motion to remove our secondary Spanish teacher from our consent agenda.
I have a motion by Mrs. Ryerson. Do I have a second?
I'll second here, Jepson.
A second by Mrs. Jepson. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Would any member like any item to be removed to be dealt with separately? We will then vote by general consent. And hearing no dissent, the consent agenda carries. Public comments. Online, there are none in the chat. Okay, Nikki, what's your last name?
Ryan,
Reiner? Okay.
I was just,
So if you'll need to rise and state your name and your
sorry.
address, please.
Nicole Ryan, 808 Water Street, Ogdensburg.
Okay,
I was just here because I was on that one meeting that was virtual, and we were your board was gonna discuss mass optional. And then on that same meeting, you guys tabled it to this meeting, but also at that meeting, I do believe there was a motion to make graduation mask optional. So I was just wondering, I wanted to just discuss why in school isn't mask optional yet, or if that's what you're voting on tonight.
So generally, we don't engage in dialogue. You're here to offer some comment to the board. So is that your,
Yes, I would
Your
like to
comments?
see the kids having the mask optional. I think it's a better view for them. I don't think always wearing a mask is psychologically good for them. I don't think getting bacterial pneumonia is good for them, so I think there's other things to consider. I mean, kids do go home and play outside with their friends and they don't have a mask on. They go over to their friend's house and they're inside and they don't have a mask on. So that was just my take on, since I'm a taxpayer. Yes, I don't have children in this school right now, but sooner than later, I will have grandchildren possibly in this school. So that was just my recommendation.
okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, correspondence. We had some correspondence this month from Cobuson and Project Backpack. Cobuson thanking the school district for Bus Driver Appreciation Week, and Project Backpack thanking the school district for the continued support of the program. Board recognition, there is none this month, and district administrators report, Dr. Aphra.
Can we back up, Joanne?
Sure.
We had some other correspondence, we've been getting some correspondence over the last month that we haven't addressed or addressed to, is it Gerke? I'm not sure how to pronounce the last name. Jeannie Gerke, that we have not responded to. I guess my question is why I don't understand or don't know the policy of the board, but when someone takes the time and effort to write an email or multiple emails, what is our policy to respond to them?
So generally, it depends. In that particular case, and I'm not even sure because we're having a discussion about somebody specific, if that is something that we want to do in an open meeting. Some of those items were statements. They were not exactly questions. And a reply was given by Dr. Aphra, indicating that we had not had discussion beyond graduation. It was tabled at the last meeting. Special Board of Education was about graduation. There's some additional items on this agenda. So being that it's not a done deal, you know, how do you respond to somebody when we haven't taken action as a board yet?
Well, I guess my question comes even from a personal perspective. I'm sure you all remember that in March, I sent an email to the entire board, as well as left a voicemail for Stan Forrest when he was sitting in this position a couple of months ago. And I was requesting that prom be reconsidered for outside students. From my perspective, and I'm sure from Ms. Gerke's, to not even receive a response of, hey, thank you for your input, thank you for your concern, thank you for your questions, we will get back to you. It was completely ignored. My email was as well, and hers was until the third email that she sent. So I'm not asking how we responded to her or how you responded to me, because I know no one ever responded to me. What I'm asking is, what is our policy? I think if someone takes the time and makes the effort to be engaged, to share their opinion, to voice what they think is right for our students, the least we can do is say, we hear you. We've heard you, we're considering what you say. By a response of, thank you for your input, we will be discussing over the next couple of months, whatever it may be. But do we not have any kind of policy that states this is how we respond when someone, we talked about correspondence, but that wasn't even brought up in our meeting, so I don't know why that wouldn't have been.
So generally, the correspondence that we're talking about here is the thank you notes that we receive, not individual correspondence to board members. And no, there really is not a specific policy or a specific protocol that we do. Sometimes Dr. Aphra responds, sometimes I respond, sometimes it is directed towards Mr. Renning, because it's something that legal counsel should be responding to. So generally based on, you know, what it is, usually is the type of response. In this case, we haven't made a decision. So there was an email that was sent indicating that we have not made any type of a decision at this point. So following, obviously, this meeting would be the appropriate time to issue a formal reply.
So I'm not talking about a formal, answers to questions or answers to accusations, but just something to let the public know that they're being heard. I would appreciate that in March when I sent that letter and never received a response from anyone saying, hey, thanks, Mrs. Jepson, we're considering it, or, whatever it may be. Thank you for your concern for our students and our community. Something that tells people when they send an email or a letter or whatever it may be, however they correspond with us, that we're listening. Because from my perspective, 2 months ago, it fell on deaf ears. And I'm sure that's how others, as we've received, 3 emails, I think, from this individual recently, that's how they feel, is anybody listening? Does anybody hear me? Does anybody care that I took the time to be concerned? I would like to see something brought to, talk about policy. Maybe we need to bring Mr. Valerie, maybe we need to bring him back.
That's just common sense. It's not
A courtesy.
policy.
It's courtesy.
It's just, you just answer. You just do it. You don't,
Just a thank you
you
for
don't
your,
go to the lawyer. You don't go to policy. You just answer it. It's simple. It should be simple.
if we have something like that in place, I agree. But it needs to me, it needs to be something that's always done, not depending on whether we agree with the opinion or whatever it may be, but when someone reaches out to the entire board and to our administration, we need to acknowledge that they did so. That's courtesy. That's how I felt when I didn't receive a response. So I don't know, like you said, Peter, we don't need to run this by the lawyer, but we need to be responsive, and I don't know whose responsibility that is. We certainly don't want 8 people to be sending emails back, right? So whose responsibility is that? The responsibility of the clerk when we get an email to the entire board that says, thank you?
Well, technically, it would be my responsibility.
Okay.
Again, perhaps then it should be as simple as thank you for your correspondence. We have received it and we will take your opinion into consideration, because when the problem comes in is when we have people that are levying accusations. Then generally it's time when you may want to have legal counsel involved, because perhaps there are things that are going to move further than what a simple thank you for your email is going to take care of.
But I think a thank you for your correspondence, the school board has received it, we hear you, whatever, something to that effect that is sincere, that says, yes, we received it, we hear you.
And I have done that, and I believe it was Mrs. Ryerson who had sent an email prior to being on the board.
Yes.
I just responded and say, thank you, I received it, and I'm passing it on. Typically, I don't speak on behalf of the board.
Right.
Nobody individually does. We kind of,
Joanne does, right? I mean, that's your responsibility.
No, I don't speak on behalf of the board unless we agree that what I'm saying is on behalf of the board. Otherwise, my opinions individually are that of my own.
Okay.
So generally, when we've made a response, when we've drafted something, for example, for legislative output, if we've taken a stance on something, we sit down together as a group and we come up with something, and that's what goes forward. So, as a board together, we speak as a board, otherwise it is our individual opinions. But certainly saying thank you for your email is not overstepping that.
And I think it's just a courtesy, and it brings the temperature down. I mean, all I did was get more riled about the fact that nobody responded to me. So I was,
one person, like you said.
You don't know.
All
Right.
Well, like, Joanne can't be thinking that Melanie is sending it, and Melanie thinking
Right.
that Joanne's sending it, and then no one's
No
sending
one's
it.
sending
Well,
it.
generally, she and I do have conversation with each other, over, I mean, in this case, and I'm not sure if the reply from Mr. Renning has been sent yet or not, specifically addressing some things. But Dr. Opper did send an email reply, and that just further escalated, so.
So do we want to make it to me, it's a common courtesy. That's something that you would take care of. For some reason, you aren't comfortable sending a thank you.
I have absolutely no problem.
Melanie would do it, or?
Yep, point taken. I mean, we don't get a ton of correspondence.
And that's why, to me, when somebody takes the
Usually
time
phone
and the
calls.
effort,
Is
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I've had received phone calls.
Right. Generally, it's phone calls and obviously they're answered and handled right away, or the
Right.
person is called back shortly to address those and those are, to me, it's obvious those are always handled.
I just think when
immediately
an
as
email or a
possible.
letter comes in, that acknowledges their effort, and it speaks to the general public, to our community, that yes, as a board, we're listening.
Yep, not a problem. All right.
I'm gonna just throw a wrench in here. How does we have a certain step that we're supposed to go through. I don't know how that fits in with this. I mean, someone in the community is not supposed to go directly to the board without going through the proper procedures, but then I would think they need to communicate too. And just, saying that we received it is great. But is that something we have to be careful with also?
I'm not understanding what you're saying, Russ. So somebody from the community can't go to the board and raise a question?
Not really. I mean, that really isn't with a community member. Really what that is about that's about staff members. Any staff member I've ever had that's called me, I've redirected them. I think the last one, I redirected that person to their supervisor. I asked them, did they feel comfortable speaking to their supervisor? If not, I offered to talk to their supervisor on their behalf. They talked directly to their supervisor and they resolved the issue. That's more about going to the person that can fix your issue. And I'm not a principal, so I can't necessarily fix your problem. So you probably want to talk to your person that can help you do that. And, again, I don't know, other than a staff member that's sent an email as a community member, those other issues have been few and far between. And
The
that's usually
hierarchy
just a
you're
matter-
talking about is for employees.
Yeah.
School district
Generally,
employees.
a member of the public is,
I'm thinking of a parent too. If a parent has a complaint about a teacher, and instead of going to that teacher, he wants to talk to a school board member.
there I've redirected them. I just
Yeah.
simply redirect them.
But that would fall under it also. It's not just, it has to do with an employee, but.
I had a fairly lengthy conversation with somebody, and ultimately it was something where Mr. Wolfgram had to fix the issue. And so I offered, would you like me to speak to him so that this matter can be resolved? And that was what happened, and that's the end of it. Or no, I'll take care of it myself, or whatever the case is. So yes, for some of those things, that's where it needs to be redirected, and then it's simply a matter of, do you feel comfortable talking to that person, or, would you like me to have them contact you? Okay, are we good? Okay,
Good, thank you.
all right, Dr. Aphra, your report, please.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to check, do we have Colin
Yes, I'm
or
here.
Amber on tonight? I see Colin is on.
Yep, I'm here.
Would you like to go first, Colin, and tell us a little bit about what's been happening at the high school? You
Yep,
you just
I
came
can
off
go ahead.
from
So,
homecoming, and
last, oh,
the end of the school year and graduation is just around the corner. So what is it looking like from the student perspective?
I'm excited to be done.
I thought so. Colin is talking, we can't hear him.
Okay, let's stop presenting for a minute.
Can you hear me?
And we're just going to check our settings. We have a problem. Hi, Colin, you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So yeah, prom coming went pretty smoothly. No really issues there. I think everyone had pretty good time, and I know for a fact that a lot of the seniors are ready to be done. But yeah, last week we had the teacher appreciation breakfast, which also went really smoothly. Had some people bring in some food and cooked up some pancakes and eggs for the teachers, and they really enjoyed it. So I bet they felt appreciated. And now we're planning to do senior send-off postcards. So just little notes that anyone can send to a senior to just let them know that they had a good time with them or something, anything like that. And then for the end of the year, we're going to do a little treat with maybe a little note for everyone leaving, maybe on the last day of school, just saying have a great summer or thank you for a great year or something like that.
So have there been any questions or comments from students that you would like to relate to the board?
Nothing that I've heard.
Is Amber on this evening?
I don't think so.
All righty. Board members, are there any questions or comments you'd like to share with Colin this evening?
I have a question for you. How was prom received being held later in the year when it was warm and outside?
I don't think anyone was bothered by it. I think that a lot of people actually enjoyed it more being outside and not at the school, just because people spend so much time at the school and inside and not the Masonic Lodge. So yeah, I think a lot of people did like it better maybe than previous years.
Thank you.
Just a comment, Colin, if you think that was a really good thing, maybe you should do a survey of everybody that went to prom and ask them that question, what they preferred. And that would help the following classes to help make some decisions going forward.
That is a great idea. I'll have to do that.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, Colin. We are all also looking forward to high school graduation. It's going to be an exciting and wonderful event. So anything else you want to share as parting words this evening?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on the legislative front, there was a legislative session where there was a recap at the end of last week on K-12 issues. A number of activities took place. There were several that were passed by both the Senate and Assembly. Senate Bill number 51, relating to qualification of newspapers to receive compensation for publication of legal notices and requirements relating to publication. Senate Bill 52, public notice of non-candidacy for incumbent local elected officials. If an incumbent board member files a notification of non-candidacy or fails to file a declaration of candidacy, notice of that fact must be posted on the district's internet site. Those that passed the Senate, Senate Bill 235 relates to measuring a school district's improvement for the school and school district accountability report. And Senate Bill 238 requiring each school board to post the child abuse and neglect reporting hotline number in school buildings. And finally, in the Senate, Bill 302, relating to the Department of Public Instruction's waiver authority related to parental choice programs, particularly the Special Needs Scholarship Program and independent charter schools. And then we had a couple that were passed just in the Assembly. That would be Assembly Bill 59 on open enrollment and income eligibility for the statewide voucher program. With open enrollment, this bill prohibits a resident school district from denying an open enrollment application for any reason and eliminates the current limit of 3 open enrollment applications during the 2021 and 21-22 school years. If more students use the changes made here to open enroll, the positive negative impacts felt by districts regarding open enrollment would be increased. And with regard to the statewide voucher program, this bill increases the family income eligibility requirement to a family income that is no more than 300%, that's up from 220%, of the federal poverty level, which is the same as the Racine and Milwaukee parental choice programs. The impact of more students being eligible and potentially participating in the statewide voucher program will likely be felt by property taxpayers. And then finally, Assembly Bill 226 required playing or singing of the national anthem at sporting events held in a venue constructed at least in part with public monies. Also in legislation is the final rules on emergency connectivity funding. This is part of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. And that provided $7.17 billion to help students struggling with the homework gap, the term that commonly refers to the educational digital divide that impacts millions of students who lack adequate internet and broadband connectivity when they are at home or working remotely elsewhere. And then finally, Joint Finance Committee was very active and working in K-12. One that would impact us is Sparsity Aid. We do currently receive Sparsity Aid and just recently qualified for that program. This benefits small, sparsely populated rural school districts with fewer than 746 pupils and fewer than 10 students per square mile. Districts meeting those 2 criteria are eligible for payment of $400 per pupil. Sparsity Aid is currently funded from general purpose revenues, money that comes from income and sales taxes. So the governor proposed 2 changes, both for the second year of the biennium. The first, creating a second tier of Sparsity Aid to include more districts with enrollments greater than 745 students and provide those districts with $100 per pupil, and converting Sparsity Aid funding from GPR funding to a segregated funding program. And I think that covers, yes, those are the legislative activities Any questions on those before we look at enrollment, which is up on the screen? And very little change, net change, I should say. We had a larger family that moved away and a few families with individuals here and there moving in, but a net gain of 1 student since last month when we discussed this. For curriculum updates, this has been a busy month for the elementary math program. A couple of weeks ago, the teachers here in kindergarten through 5th grade had a very intensive training program on the technology aspects of the new math program. And tomorrow they have small group training on the pedagogy, the teaching strategies that go along with the math program. So they'll have a younger group and they'll do one for the older group. So that training starts now. We have a lot of summer training planned for our staff, and the sign up is looking very positive for that. And I just want to extend an invitation to all board members. I've extended an invitation to our new board members for a one-on-one casual meeting just to talk about your vision for the future of the district, how I can support your passions to accomplish achieving the goals that you would like to see accomplished during your tenure. But I welcome that to all board members to sit down and have that chat at a time and place of your convenience. We are working on updating the key performance indicators, which is the way we phrase goals here in the district, and looking to present those to you in July. And when I say we, it's the administrative team working on putting those together. Clear statements of those goals. How would those goals be measured? What is the timeline for completion of various aspects of those goals? And then putting together presentations for the board so that at regular intervals you're getting information, and that by the end of the year you would have heard a report on all of the goals. So that's been probably the most predominant topic for the administrative team's work over the last couple of months. Good news on the COVID front. We are back to 0 active cases within the schools. So we had a little uptick in 1 week, and so we're back at 0 again, which is very good news. And then in mailboxes, it's also in the packet, but citizens are going to be receiving, all postal patrons will be receiving a 2021 census form. And Stephanie does a beautiful job with this. This is something that she's taken on to make sure our counts are accurate. If we have new residents moving into the district, we have information and we can extend welcomes out to those folks. Danny's got her new book program for the elementary. So if you have a child birth to 3, they will get a little birthday book. So census is one way that we can reach out and welcome families and draw them into our schools and do that first introduction. And Stephanie was very clever. You receive it one way in the mail as a postal patron, you fold it the other way and send it back, and we pay for that. So it's quick and easy and hopefully very convenient. And then anyone we don't hear from, we follow up with telephone calls to check in with our families. So anything else this evening that you'd like to talk about?
Thank you, Dr. Alper.
Thank you.
School operations report. Are there any questions regarding Ms. Brower's report or Mr. Wolfgren's report? Do either of you have any comment this evening?
I have no comment at this time.
Thank you.
I'll just say, just to add on to what Dr. Aphra already mentioned about our book program, we're going to be sending out, starting hopefully in June or July, be sending out little birthday gifts for any child in the district who turns 1 to 4. So before they come into 4K, we'll be starting to send those out. So if you know anybody that has a little one in the district, please make sure that they fill out their census form if they don't get one, to call the district office, because we'd love to send them a little surprise in their birthday month.
Thank you, Ms. Brower. Business-related reports. Are there any questions regarding the business-related reports?
This is Sandra. I have a question. Carmen, you mentioned that you have now taken on the responsibility of issuing contracts.
Yes, that is true.
I guess I'm a little concerned, I guess, because state law 118.22 requires that the board is the one that does that, or we have assigned an employee to do the written notice of renewal or refusal to renew. I'm wondering from the board, when did we hand off that responsibility to that state statute?
The job description was board approved. That is one of the responsibilities in the human resources side of the business office.
So it's a policy, it's in the policies and the human resource area that this is responsibility?
It is not a policy, it's in the board approved job description that Carmen is going to take over that responsibility.
Who did that in the past?
Jean did. And then they were reviewed by Carmen. So it was pretty much a joint effort, I would say, between the two of them.
Well, yeah, I guess because, 120.17 also says that it's going to be the clerk's sole responsibility to furnish any teachers with a copy of the contract between the teacher and the board. So I guess I'm trying to understand who's responsible for what in order to ensure that we're following the law.
Right, but there's a difference between sending them out to have them signed by the staff member, they're then returned and they're countersigned by the board, and somebody coming in and saying, hey, I would like to have a copy of my contract. So those are two very different things.
Just trying to understand where we're covered as far as the law is concerned. That's all the questions I have.
Did you have any comment tonight, Mrs. O'Brien?
I do. So the board ultimately passes who gets a contract and who doesn't, or who will be non-renewed, if anyone, during the year. My job is simply to put names on the contracts, print them out, recollect them for the board, and then the board or the board's representative signs the contracts. So I am issuing the contracts in paper, but it's all been board approved before, I'm doing that. It's not my decision. The other thing that I would like to comment on is that it's on the very end of my board report is the calculation for summer school minutes. And so I wanted to make sure that the board members did get a chance to read through how we earn state aid for summer school. And it's kind of a lengthy calculation, but that our summer school enrollment does eventually count for full-time equivalencies for our student population and what we get aided on in our revenue limit worksheet. So you can kind of see how that works, that you need to count 48,600 summer school minutes to get one summer school FTE. and one summer school FTE counts for 0.4 of a regular FTE. So ultimately, after doing all the math, you need 72,900 summer school minutes to count for one FTE in our revenue limit worksheet. And then I also put in a little table there to show you how our summer school FTEs have decreased over time due to declining enrollment, and then last year due to the pandemic. So we're hoping for a nice comeback for that for this year's summer school. And that's all that I have.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, please.
Carmen, I have a question for you in regards to this table that you put together. Do you have an estimate of what you expect to see this year? I know summer school isn't cutting, stone yet, but do you have an estimate?
I really hope that it comes back up to 6. If we can get 7, that would be even better. I do not know what the enrollment is at this time, though. That's my guess.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions for Mrs. O'Brien?
I have a question for you. Who was the head coach volleyball recommendation?
That was Stephanie Steiger.
Hmm?
Stephanie Steiger?
Okay. Who was last year? Was it Mrs. Zima?
Yes.
Or-
All right, director's reports. Are there any questions for Mr. Covarrubias about his report? Any comments, Mr. Covarrubias?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Board comments. Are there any board members who wish to share comments at this time? Committee reports, are there any questions or comments for any of our committee chairs?
I have a comment for our policy committee. I should have done a little better homework before our meeting, along with maybe the committee can clarify something here. The summer school situation. The curriculum for the summer school was approved in March at the curriculum meeting on the 10th and then the full board on the 15th. The curriculum that was approved by the board was not what was published on the website. We have 3 classes that are listed as being accredited, each with a half credit towards high school and everything. In the approved by the school board, one of those classes was World War II. But what was actually published is a class for the age of Trump. Now, it's my understanding, again, it's an accredited course situation, which then means that we shouldn't be putting something out there that has not been approved by the board as a curriculum situation. So I'm trying to understand how does this happen? Because at this time, we have some things going on here that don't appear to follow our policies and our procedures.
And I believe we have the summer school coordinator on this evening.
You do. I believe, if I remember correctly, that all of Mr. Polkey's proposed courses were listed in the original. And I believe that we were waiting to see which one got interest or had any enrollment. And that is why the Age of Trump was chosen. That is the one that students signed up for. So that's the one we offered for the credit. They were all 4 credit courses that were listed.
I pulled up what was put into the packet for both the curriculum meeting in March and the full board meeting, and there was nothing in there as far as a listing for the age of Trump. Nothing. World War II was in there. There was nothing for the age of Trump. Those are You know, I guess if we were looking at a whole thing and a whole list of all the options and everything else, I certainly did not see that as an attachment. I guess, if the board had approved what was printed as presented in the packet on March 15th, my assumption would be that that would be exactly what would be offered and published.
I will have to go back. I have looked at so many versions of what has been offered that I can't tell you off the top of my head. So I would certainly have to go back to double check what was out there.
But the intent was to publish what was board approved. It could have been a mistake. And would you look into that and?
Yep, I absolutely will.
We'll report back and that way we can ensure that the mistake doesn't happen again.
Well, again, that Age of Trump was not approved. So can we really be offering it if that's not what the board approved as far as the summer school curriculum? Especially seeing that class is going for credit. It's not a cooking class. We're talking about something a little bit different here. This is a credited course. Did we violate our own policies? And
Does anyone from the prior curriculum committee recall that?
I pulled up the meeting minutes in the packets trying to look at this side by side, and there was absolutely nothing in that packet that is currently published on the March meeting and everything for the curriculum committee or the board committee meeting and everything else. There is absolutely nothing in that document that says anything as far as the Age of Trump.
I was not at the meeting.
So it would be 2 board members that are no longer on the board at that time. And that also is the only credited class in that packet. So then there would not be the opportunity.
There are 2 other credited classes in summer school. Health and the ag class.
Right, but as far as being taught by Mr. Polkey, then.
Correct.
So a social studies based class.
So just the version that I'm pulling up, and again, I'd have to double check if this was the one that was published, but I remember working on this. I remember we put all of them in here. So the one that I'm reading says, American Presidential History, grades 9 through 12, Famous American Women, World War II, History of American Sports, American History through Film, Age of Trump, and then it goes on health, and then agriculture, and so on. So that was the intention.
That was not what was published in the packet for the board meeting for it to be voted on. None of those things were in there. The only thing that was listed was World War II.
So how do we address that?
Well, again, according to our procedures, the curriculum has to be approved and everything. And what they've offered is not what we approved. And stuff. The other side of this is, textbooks and everything. We have our various classes out here as far as the wish tree and our Dear Martin and Counting by Sevens, all of which we are going to discuss and write and use them as a textbook situation. And I'm curious if any of those 3 books are on our approved textbook list.
Summer school does not follow the regularly approved curriculum. These are often creative enrichment opportunities for children. So we wouldn't have an elementary cooking class or a book and cook type of scenario during the regular school year, but during the summer, as long as it's taught by an accredited and approved teacher who's licensed in the area. So if it's a 3rd grade teacher, working with 3rd grade students, or a middle school teacher working with middle school age students. But in terms of being creative with how they remediate or enrich students, that varies greatly during summer school and does not generally follow the regular textbook.
If it was an accredited class, it would have to though, correct?
If there was a textbook used, most of our social studies classes don't use a textbook per se. Most of those are source documents pulled from a variety of media, to include like the Library of Congress and so forth.
But an accredited class during summer school, I'm sorry, I don't like talking to you behind
Yeah,
my back.
that's fine.
It would have to follow all regular policies of curriculum, et cetera, right?
If it's a
If it was
4-credit
accredited.
class, right.
Okay.
So taking health in the summer would be the same equivalent to taking health during the school year, that you're getting the same 0.5 credit experience that the other students are having in a more condensed fashion.
As far as I'm concerned, this Age of Trump, because it was not in the packet as such, World War II was in the packet as such, that was approved by the board as far as a curriculum. This class should not be offered this summer because it was not approved.
So is it possible to approve it after the case? If we wanted to be taught, can we approve it now? I mean, sure it was wrong.
Does it have to go to the curriculum committee first?
Well,
You're working under a short time frame here. You're
Right.
gonna have to do something kind of fast if you're gonna do that.
right, exactly.
You're approving staffing, and it does list the courses.
In
So
there,
you could probably amend the motion to include, it does name the teacher, the course, the hours, and the rate of pay. And I do believe that's the course that Mr. Polkey is listed as teaching.
That's correct.
so that would be the most simplistic way to resolve it. Because that is the version that is also listed on the district's website.
But the version that's listed on the website is not what the board approved.
Correct. However, and the easy fix for it would be to include that in a motion when we are approving summer school contracts. Because that was the question, how do we fix this?
It seems as if we are not, that our policies are being wiggled around instead of being held solid as to what's going on.
So unfortunately, we are all humans, and I think it's fair to state that sometimes mistakes are made, and it has certainly happened in the past before when for example, policy committee it hasn't happened recently, but policy committee had approved changes to policies, and inadvertently at the time, the wrong policies were loaded up into the board packet. People do make mistakes, and I do not believe that anyone deliberately did this or tried to do anything deliberate. I'm not sure if there are other courses that were finalized that are different than what had been at
Yes.
that.
Yes, there are several other courses that were listed in the packet as far as being approved that do not match what was actually published. I believe there are at least 3 others. The most concern I had here is because this is an accredited situation.
Additionally, Mr. Holman wasn't at that meeting. I was not a part of curriculum at the time. I was not at that meeting. I don't know what Mrs. Cerno discussed or introduced or what was talked about, or what in fact was given to those committee members. So I would think erring on the side of somebody was a human being and made a mistake, and this is how we fix that mistake, would be the most gracious thing to do. And that's not looking at it as we're bending a policy, it's addressing a situation. I'm not sure if Mr. Pokey has interest to teach that class, and I think it would be kind of a shame that we have kids lose out on a half of a credit because now there's something that the children are not interested in doing.
Well, I guess also as far as the topic, I would have hoped that the school district would be a bit more politically neutral. And if we were going to be studying recent presidencies, we'd cover the last couple in order to raise all those same questions so that there does not appear to be a political bias by the district.
So Mrs. Cerno, can you maybe address why Mr. Polkey might have found this to be a popular topic with students?
Yeah, I can, if you'd like, I can read his proposal to see how I don't want to misspeak on how he proposed his course, but I think he was looking for, like we said, courses that would have interest, and this was one that kids signed up for, so that's what we went with. And of course, when you want something in a moment, you can't find it, right? I can find Mrs. Connolly's course proposals. It doesn't help, does it?
If it helps, I have a printout of what was in the summer school packet.
Perfect.
All
That
right.
would help.
According to this course description, this course studies the 2016 and 2020 presidential elections, what can be learned from them. The course studies Donald Trump's rise to a legitimate presidential candidate, his upset victory over Hillary Clinton, the key moments of his presidency and his defeat in his bid for re-election to Joe Biden, including but not limited to his proposal to build a border wall, immigration record, economic numbers, nomination to the Supreme Court, response to Black Lives Matter protests, and the COVID pandemic. Students will earn half credit for the work when it's completed. That's the proposal, the information that was included in the packet that was published. I mean, if we were going to study recent presidential history, there are definitely key moments as far as other folks with immigration records, economic numbers, Supreme Court justice nominations, protests, pandemics.
And being a no course, I can't, I trust Tom Polkey with every ounce of my being, and I know he's a fantastic teacher, and I have full faith that he would present a class that would have student interest and have a non-biased approach, just like he does every day as an instructor. So it was offered, and we have interest in it, and we have kiddos that are signed up. That's all I know.
Thank you, Mrs. Cerno.
So where are we at here?
Well, we can, again, address this when we get to the contracts for summer school, which is watermelon. Thank you.
I understand and agree with Sandra's concern about unbiased presentation of such materials. I guess I don't have an issue with the course being taught if our students are interested in it. We found something in history in the social studies realm that kids are after. But perhaps we need to address it with that concern. I guess to Mr. Polkey or whoever teacher may be that this is an unbiased presentation, that we don't get into a political discussion as to rights or wrongs or that type of thing.
I would imagine he would not treat this any differently than he does any of his AP classes, and likewise with Mr. Kazarowski. They both bring a very open, my kids have had both teachers, and they present information and the kids kind of take it, and the children debate each other sometimes, I know. I've heard that in Mr. Kazarowski's class, that the kids themselves get into lively debates and the teachers are not participating in that. They are facilitating, they're not interjecting opinions. I believe they have tried before and they don't solicit anything from either of our secondary social studies teachers. So they are both, they do this every day, and they both are very well and capable of being professional and maintaining any impartiality.
Does that address your concerns, Sandra?
Yeah, somewhat. One other question as far as our summer school offering. I didn't see anywhere what we have published anywhere for anybody to sign up for tutoring, but we have 2 teachers that are listed for tutors on our list. So I'm curious as to how that jives.
Those are invitation only remediation type courses. One offered by Mariac, which would be our credit deficient students, and the others that just need extra support, which is what Michelle Kashalik is doing.
But there's no place for students or parents looking at the summer school offerings and stuff to say, I want to sign my child up for tutoring.
Right. Typically, we don't offer just a separate tutoring course for summer school. There's typically at the middle and high school levels, there's remediation. So students who have failed to complete something or are in jeopardy of being credit deficient, those would be the students that would be invited to come to those types of courses. Everything else is considered more of an enrichment type course at that level.
Just trying to make sure I understood what the intent was. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Unfinished business, we have none this month. New business, item A, consider approval of secondary math curriculum as presented.
Just a second here. Did we skip right over, buildings and grounds?
Oh, did you have a comment? I
Yeah.
didn't know if there was any other.
So Russ, I went down and looked at those bleachers. So those the 3 sets of bleachers are there. In fact, not only the ones you sent a picture of the inspection report, the picture of the bleachers was the city-owned bleachers. It wasn't a picture of these. But you're saying these are out of compliance, those 3 sets of bleachers with the.
Yeah, because they're open already, right? Are they open already?
No.
So they get inspected annually and there are code violations based on that report. They do look at all the bleachers that are at the high school, so.
Were they, all of them that are up there are out of code violation?
There's 3.
In various ways, yes.
Those bleachers aren't very old.
I know.
And they've got the walkway, the railings.
They don't have the ramp and wheelchair access. That's one thing they gotta have, correct?
By today's standards, yes. And the other advantage that the new bleachers would offer is that they are elevated. People have complained that the lower few sets of bleachers, you can't see
Well,
anything.
and my thought process was not for down there, but to bring them up on this field up here, where you don't need elevation, and
Yeah.
they're
I can check
awfully
this.
good bleachers to be scrapping. And I'm sure there's code amendments that you can do to them to bring them up to code on certain things too. But, I mean, I'm not trying to take bleachers away from Dave Sarna by any means, but, God, we gotta start looking at ways to keep.
If the code violations aren't expensive, right?
Can't be as much as new bleachers.
Yeah,
I think it's worth looking into.
sure.
I went down there that night after
After we're
I
done.
was curious about those. No, those are not open.
Which one's the ones way?
There's only 3 sets down there. Those
Okay.
are the ones that belong to us. The other 2 sets belong to the city of Bay.
Okay, yeah,
And those are gone.
okay, they're gone already.
Yeah.
Okay,
And those were wide open. Those are clearly
Yeah.
something that,
Those are down at Lindsay. I thought
Yeah,
they used at
yeah,
Lindsay, right?
yeah, we just borrowed them.
I will check for you.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, don't let them take them, and we got another buildings and grounds meeting.
Yeah, then we're gonna do the walkthrough.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just thought I better bring that
Yeah.
up.
You have another meeting before?
Before the
Before
graduation.
graduation, yeah.
Oh, you do.
On the 27th.
Yeah.
All right. Good now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, item 18, new business. Item A, consider approval of secondary math curriculum as presented.
I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the math curriculum as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second?
Carrie Jepson, a second?
Second by Mrs. Jepson. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, consider approval of recommendation to change from the adopted Lucy Calkins Phonetics Unit of Study for grades 4K through 2 to Really Great Reading as presented.
I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the change from the adopted Lucy Calkins phonics units to study for grades 4K through 2 to Really Great Reading as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item C, consider approval of pre-ACT and Mosaic Adaptive Academic Learning to replace the ACD periodic as the grades 9 and 10 universal screener as presented.
I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the replacement of the ACT periodic as grades 9 and 10 universal screener as presented by the Mosaic Adaptive Academic Learning as school year 2022 and beyond.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second?
Second
Second by Mrs. Petke. Any discussion?
But I came up the same.
I'm not sure
We got what you mean.
Did it include the pre-act for next year and the mosaic
Maybe you
for
better restate
22
that,
and
Russ.
beyond?
I think it was
Just-
backwards.
Just to be
No,
clear
it was
that both
right,
got
it was backwards, but it was right. Should I try it again?
If you would like to, just repeat it for clarity.
Okay, I move that the Board of Education approve the pre-act school year 2021-22 and Mosaic Adaptive Academic Learning school year 2022 and beyond to replace the ACT periodic as a grades 9 and 10 universal screener as presented.
And are you still comfortable seconding that, Mrs. Petke? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item D, consider approval of E.O. Johnson printer and support services as presented.
Sandra Ryerson, I ask that the board approve the use of the E.O. Johnson printer and support services as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Ryerson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, consider approval of the middle school, high school gym fans and cages replacement by Master Electrical Services LLC as presented.
Russ Johnson, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the Manawha Middle School, High School gym fans and cage replacement by Master Electric Services LLC as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second? A second. Second by Mrs. Jepson. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item F, consider approval of summer school staffing as presented.
I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the summer school staffing as presented.
Do you want to include anything regarding?
That's one we wanted to
Yeah.
work on there.
Does that have anything to do with staffing though?
You'd have to roll it into that, or it's going to have to be whatever was presented back at curriculum committee in March.
So we're not talking about just staffing.
Correct. You'd have to amend the motion to,
With the amendment.
to include the course that Mr. Polkey has listed as teaching, which is the course named the Age of Count.
or maybe it would even be the whole assigned classes as presented, because that is what is in the packet.
You're good with words tonight, Russ.
I'm temporarily lost here.
So maybe
How was
summer
my
school
motion?
instructors and assignments, because that's actually how the top of it is titled. In the packet, it is summer school instructors and assignments 2021.
Can I say yes? Yes, I make that motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second? Mrs. Petke, and second by Mrs. Petke. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item G, consider approval of CDC face covering updates related to district-wide opening plan as presented.
So this is just talking about outdoor.
This was outdoor,
Yes.
and it'd be right up there. And then the next one is about summer school.
So why is this listed as outdoor here?
Because remember at policy, there was 2 separate ones that were discussed.
This is what was tabled from our special meeting. And it was only concerning the outdoor updates of the CDC at that point in time. That's why it was tabled till policy. And this is what we talked about that night.
Right. But so even though this is outdoor, it includes what you're stating up here, right?
Correct.
That's the
Yes.
policy.
Yep, that is what it is.
I'm a little confused. This is approval of CDC outdoor face covering updates.
Correct, which is that they're not mandated outdoors. So if you recall that at the policy meeting, because you had spoke to it,
Right?
to keep face coverings on indoors through June 4th, through the end of the day on June 4th, 2021, keep the status quo as it is. And this would be outdoors only when physical distancing of 6 feet is not possible. Event exceptions being found in the event plan, so graduation would be an exception to that. And expectations for WIA events found or followed separately because the WIA has their own set of rules.
Well, we're gonna get to discuss this is we
I was
make the
gonna say, we have
motion.
to put a motion and a second before we can discuss, correct?
Correct.
So I will make the motion, Russ Johnson, I recommend that the Board of Education consider approval of CDC outdoor face covering update related as district-wide reopening plan as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Pecky, second.
Second by Mrs. Pecky. Before we start any discussion, our people at online cannot see that slide.
No, they can't.
Okay, yeah, now they can. Thank you. Okay, discussion.
So my concern is that the motion we're making is to approve CDC outdoor face covering updates, but our policy was updated for indoor and outdoor.
Correct.
So why don't we
Because,
call it CDC outdoor face coverings update?
because that was the way that it was listed on our agenda when we had that discussion, and this is the amending that we worked through became the slide during that meeting.
So shouldn't the motion read differently?
That
We're not approving outdoor face covering updates, we're approving face covering updates.
Well, the update is that currently, as it stands, you have to wear a mask outside.
Right?
So the update to it is that the mask covering outside goes away as long as you're 6 feet apart or further, but nothing else changes.
No, the revision, we talked about that only being in effect through June 4th.
Correct.
That's the revision.
Correct.
But that includes the indoor,
Correct.
so that is revised differently than just the outdoors not only being revised, the indoors being revised, as it only is only through June 4th.
So then the best thing to do would be to vote on this first. And I would come in and would take it as presented, and they would kill it. And then somebody would be free to make another motion.
Am I right, or am I thinking of this backwards? I'm confused by that.
You are thinking of it correctly. I do have comments based since the policy meeting. I have had feedback from Zone 4 voters, several who are sick and tired of the CDC and DHS telling them what to do with their kids. They are fed up with the masking, the social distancing. They just want it done. So understanding what the voters who I am supposed to represent want and everything is key in understanding how we should be looking at what we're doing.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the table, which does need to be addressed before any other motions can be made. Is there further discussion on the motion at hand, which is the motion as it is written? Okay, hearing none, those in favor of the motion as it is written signify by saying aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion is defeated. Would somebody like to make a
Oh, I thought
separate?
we had to
motion.
approve this one and then.
No, we do not have to approve it, we
You
killed
shot
it.
it down. We killed it,
Yeah.
now we'll
So
make a
now
new
we
one.
can have a new motion.
I thought we had to approve this one and then make it.
No, no,
That's okay.
And so what do we refer to this as?
so
Just the
you
face
could,
coverings update.
you could say, consider approval of face covering updates both indoor and outdoor.
That would cover it, okay.
Yeah.
Carrie Jepson, I move that the Manawa Board of Education approve the face covering updates for both indoor and outdoor as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Jepson. Do I have a second?
Mrs. Becky, second.
Second by Mrs. Pecky. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Yeah, hang on.
Oh,
But-
okay, sorry.
So
Go ahead, Russ.
explanation on what does that mean now? We're gonna wear face coverings indoors? Explain, I'm sure the listeners too want to know what does that mean?
So it means that it would remain as it is inside through the end of the day on June 4th, 2021. So that is through the end of the day for our regular school year, which the last day is June 4th. And outdoors, when there is not the possibility of physically distancing 6 feet. It carves in the event exceptions, which include graduation, because we've already decided that. And WIAA expectations are also different because the WIAA dictates what we do or do not do in order to participate. So does that answer?
Perfect.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure everyone else
Sure.
understood.
And it's not that I understand what you're saying, and there are constituents who don't want our children wearing masks. I get that. My perspective, and I know, just talking to my son, who's a high school student, they have, what do we have, 13 days left? 13 school days left for the underclassmen, am I right?
Roughly
We don't
13.
count.
I
We count every day.
You do too. And my thoughts are, we've dealt with this all year. It's the norm for our children, for our students at this point, and for our staff. Let's err on the side of caution if we're going to err at all and keep them protected for the next 2.5 weeks through June 4th. We certainly don't want to jeopardize any kind of outbreak at this point with graduation and the other events coming at the end of the school year. Let's finish the school year strong with our kids healthy and regroup and reconsider things for next year in a completely different atmosphere than we dealt with in 2021.
Any further discussion?
I think that wearing face masks outside is totally unnecessary. How about changing the 6 feet to 3 feet?
So again, that would require an entire brand new motion.
Just an idea.
So we,
Well, and how do you regulate that?
Well, the thing is,
You
at
know.
6 feet, they're probably not gonna really do 6 feet.
You know what I'd say, if you're outside, you're outside.
I
Take
get
the
it.
social distancing away and just go no mask.
I like that idea.
Well, then we gotta kill this one.
Yeah.
So,
We got all night.
Here we go.
Brew some coffee somewhere.
okay, so we currently have a motion on the table
Yeah,
by
you said
Mrs.
my motion?
Jepson, seconded by Mrs. Petke. So those in favor of that particular motion signify by saying aye.
Wait, I have a question.
Yes.
Can she change her motion?
No, it's been seconded.
Already
It's
been
been
seconded.
seconded.
So I cannot, okay.
Okay, so those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion defeated. Somebody like to
Go
make
for
another
it, Pete.
motion?
Now I'm on the hot seat, huh?
That's okay.
Mr. Holman, you wanna take that for me?
I messed up enough already.
All right, I make a motion that the Manawha School Board approve the face coverings will be optional outside and that physical distancing will not be in effect outside.
What about inside?
Or a factor.
Pardon?
It won't be a factor.
It won't, again, it won't be a factor.
And
The inside follows.
indoors?
And then, so this one is still calling for through June 4th though, correct?
Right.
This is in the school year.
And do we need to follow that?
You can change this however you're making your motion.
You have the power.
You have power. Okay.
So then, I already mentioned the outdoors with the taking
Optional.
away the physical distancing, mask optional.
Mhm.
I would also include in this motion that would apply indoors from this period forward as well.
Could you clarify what this period, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
At the end of this vote,
So you're making, are you saying that masks should be optional indoors and outdoors at our schools?
that's the
this point
motion that
forward?
I'm putting on.
It is, okay.
And does that include optional inside physical distancing as well?
Correct.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Griffin. Do I have a second?
Sandra Ryerson, I will second.
Second by Mrs. Ryerson. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
So that was 4 ayes. Is that correct, Mr. Holman, Mrs. Ryerson, Mr. Griffin, Mr. Johnson? Okay, opposed?
Nay.
Nay as well. 3 nays. The ayes have it. All right, item H, consider approval of summer school mitigation plan as presented.
This would then also need to be updated to reflect the current mask optional. Would it not?
You would need to make a motion to that effect if that is what you wish to do.
Okay. Sandra Ryerson, I make a motion that the summer school mitigation plan follow the current mask optional vote that was just approved.
And does that include the physical distancing as well?
It's the, however we listed it.
Just want the clarity because it's
Yes.
going to be asked by our staff.
Yes.
So you're saying masks are optional, no matter what the distance, no matter. where
No
you
matter
are.
what the distance, yes.
Sorry, a second?
Pete Griffin, I second that motion.
A second by Mr. Griffin. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay? Motion carries to mask optional and no physical distancing. Item I, consider approval of high school band trips for pandemic events as presented.
I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the high school band trips for parades and events as presented.
I have a motion by Mr. Holman. Do I have a second? Mrs. Petke, second. Second by Mrs. Petke. Any discussion?
Yes,
Doesn't that include masks?
that also needs to be adjusted to our current mask standing, because that was also, if we're in close contact, we had, getting on and off the bus, that kind of thing.
But does it? If that is already in place, wouldn't that supersede anything that we've got that follows?
I'm
I'm
trying,
asking the
It's not on
question.
school property though, these are out at the memorial sites and the rodeo parade.
Then that shouldn't be an
so-
issue, right? The masking shouldn't be an issue if we're not on school property.
They stage here at the
Oh, they
elementary
stage
and
here.
use, we
Okay.
come into the building and use our restrooms. We've had that agreement with the Lions Club for a number of years.
But for our band though. Not the rest of the floats or anything like that, right? We're just talking about our band. So they would be on school property prior to the actual parade. Okay.
For the rodeo parade.
For the rodeo parade.
Well, but they will-
but they will be for memorial setup too. I would assume that they're all getting together to be able to go from event to event.
They'll be loading on buses here, right? So that would be, if your wishes are to make masks optional for these as well, that would need to be amended. Is the way it was written in policy committee, the way it was presented, is
The way it
that
was
masks are
presented,
required on the
yes.
buses.
Yes.
So again, I would suggest that we vote on the current motion that is at hand first, and then you would be welcome, if that motion is defeated, to make another motion for clarification.
So what is the mask situation right now if we don't go?
They have to wear masks on the buses, traveling to and from all the different sites on Memorial Day. There's four,
Four
Carrollton,
or five.
Simcoe.
Yeah.
and then the rodeo parade, they would be, I think they're bussed actually at the end, I think they bussed to the back, or some of them use
Yeah.
instruments and stuff, so they would be required to wear masks at that point.
Are we making now?
Well, do you want to, I mean, Mr. Pleasure, do you want to, basically, I mean, do you want to continue to comment on it, or do you want to vote on it and either it stands or it's defeated and then somebody else makes a different
I
motion?
want to make the comment.
Okay,
I'm thinking we're gonna have a fair number of kids in a small confined bus. I would have no problem with maintaining the mask mandate in that situation. In the bus. And in the parade or whatever, then I would go back to the one we just passed.
they're not going to have a mask on the bus now, Russ, when they go back and forth to school every day.
That's a good point. But we're not talking about just every day. We're talking only at these events, the parade. It's just an idea. I didn't say it was a good one.
That could start to get real confusing then.
Yes.
Well, how many are actually gonna show up with a mask, because they're accustomed to, oh, we don't have to wear masks anymore.
Good point.
They're gonna show up without a mask, right? I'm sure.
So we have a motion on the table for the policy or not policy, the proposal as it is written. Those in favor of said proposal as written signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion is defeated. Would you like to make a new motion?
Sandra Ryerson, I'll make a motion for, to approve the Memorial Day activities and the rodeo parade for the bands, for the dates that are listed, and that face coverings are optional for the Memorial Day activities, and social distancing is not applicable.
I have a motion by Mrs. Ryerson. Do I have a second?
Pete Griffin, I'll second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Motion carries. Item J, consider approval of Wapaka County Shared Social Worker position for the 2021-22 school year as presented.
Mrs. Pecky, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the Wapaka County Shared Social Worker position for the 2021-2022 school year as presented.
I have a motion by Mrs. Pecky. Do I have a second?
Russ Johnson, I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Johnson. Any discussion?
Was there any feedback at the HR and Policy Committee? There was discussion about possibilities of how that social worker was going to be shared, or if one social worker could be assigned to each school, and therefore you can access them on other days. Say they're supposed to be in Iowa, yours is actually at the county. Melanie, I believe you're going to follow up with the county on that?
No new information at this point.
Any other discussion?
So is as presented, does this mean it would be the same person at each school, at a different school 4 days a week, or could that change? Is the way this is presented, the way we're voting on it, lock that into that situation?
That situation isn't described specifically. It's that we would contribute for our portion of having a social worker 1 day a week. The person hasn't been hired by the county, and I haven't gotten a report back from Ted, the director, as to what the County Board of Supervisors has indicated as their final decision on proceeding with this.
Oh, so we don't know for sure that the county will do this if the schools all agree to it?
Correct.
Okay.
So we would have to
The
hammer
other
that out
three
as a
schools.
memorandum of understanding.
Yeah, the other three schools are moving forward, so it could hinge to on whether or not the other three schools could move forward without us, or if that cost, makes it prohibitive for them.
So the other three school boards have voted yes on this?
Or at least they're moving forward. I can't say that there's been a board vote, but the superintendents all have said they're moving forward.
All right, any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Item K, first reading of policy 0165.1, notice of regular meetings as presented. Is there any feedback on the revised policy for notices of regular meetings? If not, this policy would be up for approval at the June regular board meeting.
Can you explain what the change is? I looked at it and I couldn't
Yes.
figure anything out.
So
it's
we
right there.
struck,
Oh, it's
Yeah,
up there.
we struck,
Racine Journal anyway.
yeah, the Racine Journal, and we just added where the postings are located. That's the change to the policy.
Well, there wasn't a nice green line on mine.
It was in your packet with a nice green line
Mm.
and a red.
His would be black and white.
The monitor only does black and white.
All right.
You mean I have to print in color now?
Just gotta read it in color.
All right, any other feedback on policy 165.1? All right, next item then will be first reading of policy 9130, public requests, suggestions, or complaints. Any feedback on this particular policy? This policy then will be up for approval at the June regular Board of Education meeting as well. Item M, consider approval of naming the Wapaka County Post as the official district newspaper.
Russ Johnson, I move that the Manawha Board of Education approve the Coxsackie County Post as the official district newspaper.
I have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do I have a second?
Be careful.
Second. Second by Mrs. Petke. She beat you to it. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Confirm Board of Education treat and attendance at staff recognition. Everybody remember what they have and how you're getting it here? Okay, yours is here.
I got them.
Yours is in your vehicle.
Yeah,
You guys
I'll get
got
them
yours?
hopefully tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm bringing them up to the school and giving them, Artie's gonna be there.
That's gonna be at the Commons?
Correct.
Yeah, I won't be there, but I'm gonna bring them at 7:30 in the morning. Riding quick trips, kind of ready tomorrow.
So you're not gonna be there, Mrs. Jepson? No? Mr. Holman?
What time is it?
2:30?
Oh, I'm not gonna be there.
No? Mrs.
I won't be
Larson? No? Mr. Griffin?
I'm planning on it,
Okay,
but I could get pulled away real easily, so put me down.
okay.
Yeah, I don't think I'll
And
be
you are
back.
not
I
in,
know,
okay.
I have training for my job.
If I get back, I'll come, but I don't count on it.
If it's raining and Sheboygan, I'll come.
You're gonna track me.
I think it's supposed to be a rainy day, so
My
perhaps.
daughters have their last track.
All right, item O, discuss interest in starting a Board of Education news article for the Wolfpack Express. Essentially is their interest in board members authoring articles. If so, schedule, topics.
Whose idea was this, or what's behind the request, I guess, or wait?
Well, I mentioned it when we were talking about the letter, the Wolfpack newsletter, when we had that online meeting that
So
day.
you were volunteering.
I'm okay with
That's
it.
the way I read it.
I'm okay with that. I just need to understand the parameters and that type of thing. But the reason we brought it up here is if it's only me that's interested in doing it, is it worth it for just me to be the one to do it? Or if there was,
How
more
about if
than
we,
just
how
one?
about if we gave you inputs and you did the,
And I
you're the
I do
author.
the writing,
yeah,
so I'm gonna write it for you?
yeah, pretty much.
Kind of like doing your homework for you, huh? Okay. Well, I could do that.
Great.
I could do that for you.
So your thoughts on when you brought this up were like kind of here's what the board's been up to?
Or here's some upcoming things that, again, trying to improve the community understanding of who the board is and what it is that we're doing, and everything behind the scenes. Because even in our meetings today, there's a lot of group things that as presented. Well, unless somebody has actually gone through and read whatever, 200 plus pages and everything, they're not going to really, maybe get or understand, some of the different things that the board takes care of and is responsible for, is looking at, and those types of things. That was the general thought process. Again, with the focus on trying to help improve community relation and communication and their impression of the board. Yes.
And the Wolfpack Express is published 7 times annually, correct?
Yes.
Stephanie did put a schedule in if the tentative one for the coming year.
Right.
Now, it certainly can be amended,
Sure.
but
That's generally where it's been in the past, is 7 issues.
yes. And then there are a couple of issues that have kind of a specialty focus, the graduation edition and the mandated public notices that we need to do per board policy.
And those are in addition to these 7, correct?
No,
No, they're
those are special editions that are identified.
Okay, so there's really only 5 that are general information that would be appropriate to put something like this in?
I would say the graduation edition certainly has there's probably still room to put a small article in there. Annual notices, that one is pretty capped. But a welcome message is often what's in there for the new year. So a welcome message from the board might be a nice thing.
Okay, so is there interest? Is there not interest?
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a way of opening up some dialogue with the community, or at least like Sandra said, was, you know, letting them know what we're up to. What do we do? You know, what is it that we're spending hours at night, you know?
And it wouldn't necessarily have to be in every one of the, I mean, it could be.
We don't try to force.
Maybe you do it
information
twice a
if
year.
there's Nothing new, yeah.
Yeah, it could be 2 or 3 times,
Yeah.
you know, just having a little bit of a
I like the concept of it.
board, you know, school board corner kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and like you had said earlier, Joanne, about what comes from you is not necessarily the board's opinion. It would be something that we would have to put together.
Mm-hmm.
We would all have to
Yeah.
approve as a
Proofread
board,
it,
right?
yeah.
This is the communication we want out there, and so maybe we do it a couple times a year. Is there room in it? Not necessarily as a set space, but if we do it 2 or 3 times a year, to
We submit and Greg Siebert at the paper lays it out. So we never know what page it's gonna be on. It's not always in the same position. It depends on the size and if you might have photographs that go with it.
So schedule wise, how many times a year are we thinking?
2 to 3.
Okay,
You don't
and
want it to be done, right?
No, you don't want it to be
I
done.
don't-
You don't want it to be boring.
I don't
Then
think it should
You want it
be-
to be relevant as
Right.
to what's happening at the time, you know, around that time that it's gonna be published.
I don't think we should have a set thing where we have to have
Right.
something.
No.
in.
I agree.
No,
When we have something to put in, we can put it
Right.
in.
I agree.
And if we don't
Then
do
you're
anything,
not.
You're not
No,
You're
forcing
not
it.
obligated to do that.
Yeah.
You're not
whenever
forcing it.
Sandra has something to say,
be careful what you ask for.
right, do we have any topics that we want to be sure to cover?
Well, I think like
Current
Sandra
events.
said too, it's gonna depend on the current events and that, around that time frame.
Right, because it's not exactly timely either, really. I mean, that's really why we haven't done it and used it, because there is certainly a lag. You know, so,
So an idea comes up and what we want to put in there may not get in there for 2 or 3 months. It's kind of what you're saying, delay, right?
2 to 3 weeks.
2 or 3 weeks, okay.
So when you
So
get
that's
to,
relevant.
from the time you submit it to the time it actually ends up in the postal box is somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks.
So if you're gonna address things that maybe have happened in the last 6 weeks or something, or are upcoming in the next month or so, you're kind of within you know, the current past to the near future.
Have some old news and some.
Yeah, the old news and the new news.
Some what's coming up, yeah.
do we have an idea of when and what we would want for a first topic so that we have some sort of a plan in place?
When is the next one coming out?
So you got the annual notice one is pretty full, you said. That,
Cause that'll have graduation stuff in it, right?
Well, that's the one coming out now.
She's gonna
Oh,
have,
yeah.
there's gonna be a graduation edition coming out in June.
okay.
So she's showing next year's, but if
Yeah.
you want to do something a little sooner.
Well, just, well, even just in the annual notices, a welcome to the school, you know, that kind of a thing, just you know, nothing substance, you know, just a welcome to the students, we're looking forward to the year, you know, that type of thing.
Watch your future Wolfpack Express for
Yeah, like a kind of
Yeah, kind
letting
of
people know
prepare
we're
them
going
for
to
it.
be. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, so plan October, and then I would presume closer to October, we can figure out what the topic of interest is going to be based on what's happening then.
We'll do this little blurb at August 1 and then something in October.
All right, August to watch, and then October for a main topic. Okay, next meeting dates. May 19th is the recognition Heart of Gold in the Front of Education presentation, 2:30 in the high school, middle school commons. May 27th is Buildings and Grounds Committee at 5. May 29th is the Little Wolf High School commencement, 11 o'clock out at the football field. Rain date is May 30th. Mr. Wolfgram does need to know this evening, will you be at the commencement ceremony, and are you wishing to hand out diplomas? So typically board members hand out diplomas, so you gonna be there? No?
Yes.
Yes, for Mrs. Jepson, Mr. Holman?
Probably not.
No? Okay, Mrs. Ryerson?
Wedding.
I will not.
Mr. Griffin?
I will be there.
Okay. On stage or just with your family?
What time is it again?
It's 11 o'clock.
Now,
I can make.
You can be there? Okay.
Yeah,
Pete, pick your group.
put me on the stage. I wanna
Yeah.
hand out.
Right.
Cause I gave the other kids theirs, so I'd have a trifecta in them.
now if there happens to be a rain date,
Then
and it's in the gym when we are not there.
It's not gonna rain.
It's not.
It's not.
The rain date, I mean, the first rain date would be.
Yeah.
So, but it was a complete washout, then it was in the gym following.
Correct.
It would not be.
Right.
I will not be.
You will not be there? Okay, and I will also be there. So we will have 4 board members, Mr. Wolfgram.
Sounds good. We will make sure that they divvy them up. And Mr. Griffin, did I hear you correctly? You want to be able to hand off to your son?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, June 1st is curriculum committee at 6, June 2nd is policy at 6, June 7th is the board retreat at 5:30, June 8th is finance at 6, and June 21st is the regular Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m.
I have a question.
Yes,
Is just to propose, is it possible to meet at 6 p.m. instead of 7, or is it totally out of the question for our regular board?
we've done that in the past, and it has stirred up a hornet's nest with the city of Manawa because it's in conflict with their meeting.
Council meeting?
Correct.
But what we have done is when we've got a closed session, we've done that, started that like at 6:30, or started it early, and if we got done, we were done. If we're not, we'd continue after the regular board meeting, just to help out so we're not here so late.
Correct. One issue that was put into the chat box, one question, and I just did not see it at the time. And now there's another question coming in. The question was, what about masking regarding the WIAA?
Well, we gotta follow their guidelines,
Or we don't have events, right?
right? That's what happened at Luxembourg Castle.
So
Luxembourg Castle had taken the masks
Yeah.
off, and nobody would come and play them. So the board reconvened and put the masks back
A
on.
week later.
So for events, you gotta mask. Is that what the WIA
At
says?
the track meets, I haven't seen masks.
And you don't have to in baseball or softball, except in the dugout if you use a dugout. If you don't use the dugout, then you don't have to.
Following the WIA rules.
So we should probably make a motion to follow WIA guidelines.
That would probably be prudent so that there is some sort of clarity. Somebody would like to make
Do we
that
know what
motion?
their guidelines are?
Yes, we do. That is published and it's been given out to all of the
That was
coaches, all the
approved
coaches have it.
earlier. Yeah.
So pretty much our hands are tied then on that one, right?
Or we're gonna have the same thing happen.
Or we're gonna
We're not
have
going to
kids
have
with no
any
sports
competitions.
You looking for a motion?
Correct.
I move that the Mattawa Board of Education follow LWIAA guidelines for all remaining sporting events for the remainder of the school year.
I have a motion by Mrs. Jepson. Do I have a second?
Second it.
Second by Mr. Holman. Any discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, and then Mrs. Risky asked, so for clarity, masks are optional for all students and staff inside and out starting immediately, and the answer to that, Mrs. Risky, is yes. All right, I am then looking for a motion. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Before we look for a motion to adjourn, I don't know where to bring this up. If it's something, I would assume it should go to HR and policy committee first, but I had some concerns when we had our special board meeting 2 weeks ago or whenever that was. We had someone who joined and wanted to speak, and they were told, oh, sorry, public isn't allowed to speak at this board meeting. I would like it to be considered that when we have a full board meeting, again, in the interest of public relations, listening to our community, listening to our parents, and whoever else wants to bring information to us or their opinions on what the community is looking for, that when we have a full board meeting, that we are allowing that public common speaking session, I don't remember how it was worded, at all of those meetings, whether it's a special board meeting or not.
That would be policy, and I will add that to the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question. Who's letting Cobuson know that it's mask optional?
I'm thinking we're gonna need the principals to do a Skylar tonight, because how will we let parents know at 10 minutes after 9 that everything's changed for tomorrow morning?
Does Cobuson have any input into this? It's their buses.
They may. Mrs. O'Brien, are you still on, and she works with the contract with Cobuson?
I'm here.
Do we know if Cobuson has any independent expectations on face coverings, or do they do whatever the board directs?
They certainly take into consideration the school district's wishes, but ultimately they are their own company. So if there's a mandate through their, company that students need to wear masks, then they would do that. I would need to contact Jacob and see what their expectations are.
I would think, the Amish, they call the Amish, and as far as I know, none of the Amish have ever worn one.
Well, it's for the safety of their drivers, so I mean, it's up to them, but I certainly can check and see. I really can't answer.
Can we just install this policy Monday? And you can make an announcement in the school with your contact Cobuson?
No, because we've already made a motion and it's already been passed, so
It's immediate.
right.
Well, I could make an motion.
As people.
I certainly can contact Jacob tonight and see, what he says. I don't know.
If you want to text him quick and see if you get an answer, he usually answers pretty quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I am then looking for a motion to adjourn, please.
Mary Jepson, I make a motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Last second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 9:14 p.m.
Fast enough, isn't it? You have to hit the buzzer quick. Looking for the buzzer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You can keep it, or it comes from the little mug over there. If you want.
Effective immediately, right?
Everybody want to be unplugged?
Please. That would be awesome. Thank you, Russell.
Tell Artie that he's meeting, so she's gonna tell him, but tell Artie I'm bringing that orange to him in the morning.
Tomorrow morning?
No,